a GPS, a bike computer, a bike alarm, and a bike light, among many things, all in one comprehensive unit. Is it too good to be true, or does it fall flat on its face? Let's find out. Roll that intro. This is yours truly, Diabetic Cycling, aka DC, and no, not the other very famous DC. If you enjoy content regards to cycling, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification. Also, hitting that like button will also help this channel going forward, putting out meaningful content in the future. So today I'm going to talk about a product called SmartHalo2, which is available for pre-order at $199. Now, I got mine through a Kickstarter project. So by end of this video, I'll be able to tell you whether to go and order one of these right away or keep your money in your pocket. So back in right around May 2019, which is now more than 2 years ago, I received a Kickstarter invitation at the time for this unit called the SmartHalo, which promised to be this one single unit that handles all your bike computer needs, also armed with a bike light for your night riding, as well as the bike theft deterrent system, among many other things. Seemed really interesting enough, and also coincidentally, this was right around the time when I was actually having some issues with my Garmin Edge 1000. So I said, I forget what the price was at that time, but I remember it was low enough where I said, even if it fails, my risk is pretty minimal. Why don't I go ahead, back this project and take a risk? So entire 29 had passed by after I backed the project, and nothing really happened. And then throughout year 2020, I received constant update emails from the folks at SmartHalo, basically sharing that they were running into manufacturing issues, that they were having engineering problems, that they were having, obviously they were impacted by COVID, and basically various delays causing the unit not shipping. Then early 2021, I believe it was right around March, a couple months ago, basically saying, hey, we have started to ship and you will get yours soon. Lo and behold, I received my SmartHalo2, and here we are, which I'm going to share with you what I think about it. So what is the premise of the product? Their website says it front and center. Make your bike smarter. It is one single comprehensive unit that features your bike computer metrics, as well as turn-by-turn guide navigation stuff, bike theft deterrent, and also features bike light, all in one unit. Before I divulge further into this video, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. Like I said earlier, I bought this with my own money, so that's not the disclaimer I need to make. The disclaimer that I wish to make right now before going forward is this product, I believe, is made for a little bit more of a casual bike rider and or someone that commutes on a bike. This, I don't think, is made for a hardcore roadie or a mountain bike rider, because it doesn't actually have fields, data metric fields available to show some of the critical fields that you and I would be accustomed to as a roadie or mountain bike rider, such as cadence, your power meter readings. Those things are not available. It gives you the distance traveled, your current speed, your average speed, as well as your time elapsed, how long you've been riding, things of that nature. It actually doesn't even have how many feet of elevation you've gained in your ride. So with that said, it is not meant to be for me, someone like me, or maybe even you. But throughout the review of this review video, I will try to be as objective as possible and not be overly negative or whatever, because it doesn't meet my needs as a roadie. Let's talk about build and aesthetics. So as you can see, it has a very big, large circular display where you could easily make out the readings that it shows you. So with my age, as well as while I'm out on the ride, the last thing I want to do is squint my eye trying to make out tiny little fonts on the tiny little screen, which is very dangerous. So big, large display with big fonts, really a great plus. And the aforementioned display is also bright enough where it functions just fine, very legible, even out on bright sunlight during daytime ride. So that's also another plus. And it also has halo lights around the screen that light up different patterns depending on the functions that you are using. However, the lights seem a little bit child toy-like. It's not like a LED. It seems more or less something you would find as flashing lights on 3-year-old child's toy. So that doesn't really jive with me all that well. Now, as far as the build is concerned, it's reasonably made well, but basically it's a 100% plastic affair. I don't quite know, I'm not sure if it would actually withstand a hard fall. Of course, I don't wish that you go down or me to go down while riding, but if it were to go down, I don't know if it would actually survive the impact of a fall. This happened when the unit arrived to me, and after a couple of rides or whatever, everything was fine. But just recently, I have noticed this. I have not fallen with the unit while I was testing it, but check this out. So I don't know if you could hear that. I shook it in front of my mic on purpose, but something is loose inside now. Unit still works. It lights up. It does what it's supposed to be doing. Or maybe it doesn't do what it's supposed to be doing. So you will have to stay tuned to find out. But something is loose inside now. I don't know what it is, but now there's something rattling inside, and that does not bode well in terms of build and craftsmanship. All right, so we are gonna now talk about the meat and potato of this thing, where it touts itself being smart. Make your bike smarter is their tagline, remember? All right, so in terms of smart features, that's where actually this thing starts to fall apart. It works paired to your smartphone via Bluetooth, and that's basically where it receives a lot of its actually smart features, and that relationship is critical for the functionality of the unit. Now, it's supposed to detect its movement and your phone being closer, and that's when it would actually does its little thing and shows up, hey, let's go ride, because it thinks it's nearby and it wants to go ride, and that's where it will start ticking up all the metric features that it has. Now, it's mostly a hit and miss affair where I don't see the unit starting up properly when it's supposed to. So that actually is a pretty big negative to me, because there is no button actually to initiate a start of a ride or anything like that. It's supposed to detect your movement, and that's when it starts to tick up. But that's not how it works all the time. Now, perhaps that's not even as bad, even though it is negative in my book. Maybe that's not as bad. However, where it also completely fails is in the middle of a ride, when you are maintaining your momentum and even at somewhat pretty high speed, the unit will just randomly decide to stop measuring your ride, and it will just say bye, and then it will just stop working completely. So I'm gonna roll a B-roll here because I was out filming with it and testing it to make this video, and you will see that my bike is moving at upwards of a 20 mile per hour average speed, and the unit, so basically there is a momentum, there is a movement, bike is moving forward, I'm moving forward, this thing mounted to the bike is also moving forward, but just randomly it will say bye because it thinks you're not moving. It thinks the ride is over. So all of a sudden your ride record is now cut short, and that is obviously a big problem. Now, I did notice, like when I'm stopped at a stoplight, when actually there is no movement, it will actually pop up a little snail icon and it will stop there. Because let's say I'm at a stop sign or at a coffee shop for 10 minutes, let's just say, and it hasn't detected a movement for that long and it wants to stop a ride record at that point, I'm okay with that. I mean, you know, whatever. But for it to stop the ride record just because I'm at a red light for 20 seconds, I don't know if I can live with that. But again, what's worse is how unit is moving, there is a movement, and yet it decides to randomly stop on its own, and that is a big no-no. Now, during my test ride, what I did was I had another GPS head unit recording my ride at the same time, something that has been tested and tried. So that ride record, I took it out for about an hour to make this video finally after several rides of trying to use this. So I took my camera out, and that final test ride was about 18 miles long, took me about an hour. So the ride record is intact on my Strava and everything, but like I'm going to show you right now on the screen, what this did was it did this whole start, stop on its own randomly because of these random stops when it thought the ride was over. I ended up with several ride records, which basically small chunks of that 1 hour ride broken into all these several pieces because it thought I just kept moving and stopping and moving and stopping. Unlike intelligent GPS units like your typical Garmin's and Wahoo's, and for my case, the Hammerheads, or even when you use your smartphone in Strava. So like you see right now, it has all these different records of a smaller ride, like 6 minutes, like 10 minutes, and whatever. Of course, I could sit here and combine them all together as one big ride record. However, is that ideal? No. Perhaps it won't bother you as much because if you're just commuting and you don't really care about having accurate ride records, it wouldn't bother you as much. However, in most cases, I think it would be problematic. So continuing on with its smart feature that actually isn't very smart and completely failing on its face is the unit is supposed to offer you GPS functionality, turn-by-turn guide, and all that. Now, you can't punch in your destination here and have this create a route much like your more expensive units like the Garmin's and Wahoo's. Instead, what you do is you create your route on your computer or wherever, and you create your TCX file or GPX file, and then you upload that route file using your SmartHalo app on your smartphone, which then tells this where to make the right turn, where to make the right turn, and all that good stuff. Now, here's my problem. As you see right now on the screen, in order to upload that file, you need to use this app, and ambiguously, you also need to click on field called search to import the GPX file, which to me is a little not as intuitive as it should be. Perhaps there should be a clearly marked button that says import route, and that's how you're supposed to import, but instead you have to go to search, and then the import GPX option shows up, then you hit that, and the file that you're trying to bring in has to be available on a cloud drive somewhere, like the Dropbox or iCloud or what have you, and that's where you're supposed to import from. Well, here's a problem. So I saved mine on the iCloud, and as you see on the screen, me trying to import actually crashes the app and it closes out entirely, where I actually couldn't import the test route file that I wanted to bring into the unit. So therefore, I was never able to test the GPS side of this thing. And before you have a different doubt, so this particular file wasn't corrupt. I was able to bring into other GPS units that I have just fine, so it wasn't the problem with the file's integrity. But now, to be fair, I was able to bring different route file into this one other time. So it did work once, but I mean, shouldn't it work every single time despite its UI shortcomings? So again, that ticks the box in terms of what isn't really smart. All right, so let's talk about the touch interface. Despite having a very large glass display, well, actually, I don't think it's glass. I think it's just clear plastic. So despite it having this big, large circular display, your touch gestures and interaction with it does not happen on that. Instead, all your touch function happens right here on this plastic surface. As you can see, it recognizes me touching it, and that's where you're supposed to do all your interaction with. So your gestures are tapping and you slide horizontally. Us living in year 2021 with the influx of smartphones and tablets and even your computers having touch interface, it's not very smooth experience. You know, again, you instinctively you go here thinking that this is where you're supposed to do your thing, but it's not. Instead, you're doing it over here on this plastic surface, and again, it's a hit and miss affair. It doesn't quite recognize gestures and tapping and slide. It's a bit clunky. It's not as responsive, and that's one of the bigger problems. It's not very instant when you give it instructions on what you want it to do. And like for mine, I have a double tap enabled for turning the light on, and again, it's a hit and miss. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So again, if it's not working 100% of the times, is it really trustworthy? Fails for me again. All right, next feature, onboard light. The unit has, okay, I'm trying to turn the light on, but remember I said how it doesn't recognize the whole gesture all that well? So here I'm trying to invoke the light. All right, we're gonna have to rely on the B-roll for me to show you the light. So the light is very nice to have on the unit. It is not bright enough for it to light up a road if you're riding in darkness in the middle of the night. However, it is bright enough, especially if you have it in the flashing pattern, for somebody else to see you. So making yourself visible, it works okay. Does not make your dark road visible to you, so that's not what this is meant for. But it is nice to have in your head unit instead of having to pack a separate dedicated light, so that is nice. However, I find this to be a problem where depending on how you have your mounted to your handlebar cockpit, the beam that it throws may not be thrown at proper angle. Like for instance, actually all of my bikes have GPS, actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. Two of my bikes have the Garmin quarter turn mount on it to accept something like this, but it's at a very slightly up angle. It's not parallel and obviously it doesn't face down. So when I have it mounted, it's actually slightly facing upwards. Therefore, when the light is on, it is actually throwing the beam slightly in the upward trajectory, not downward to light up the road. Not that it's bright enough to really light up the road. So that may be a problem. Final feature, anti-theft. Okay, so I don't have the dedicated mount with me today. It's on my other bike in my other residence. So they give you a mount, which is a dedicated mount for this, because let me try to undo the quarter mount. So under the Garmin mount, when you undo it, that's what it looks like. It has a pretty chunky, sizable turn where you do a quarter turn on this dedicated mount that SmartHalo gives you, and that's where it's supposed to mount up. And with that, they also give you this little key. It's a size of maybe about 1 inch by half an inch key that you shove into the mount where then it will unlock. Without that key, it won't unlock. And then you could arm the alarm feature on this with your smartphone, where if it detects movement while it's armed, let's say you have the bike parked in front of a cafe while you're having a coffee stop with your riding buddies, and you have it armed, and while it's armed, and if it detects movement, then it'll start blasting this 100 decibel alarm according to their website. Now, I have not tested this feature for you because by this time, so many features of this was failing. Alarm was the last thing that was on my mind to test. But let's just say, assume that it works, and that's nice. But here's where a problem arises again. So this dedicated mount, it's somewhat clunky, and I don't think it will work really nicely on a road bike, because road bike have where the stem would mount has a thicker thickness, and then it tapers off where your hands go, as well as if you use an aero bar, that round bit doesn't extend that far. So for you to mount this, because it's the clamps, the two clamps to sit in either side of the stem, and therefore it won't mount up. So then you are relegated to using the quarter mount adapter than using the more traditional Garmin quarter mount system to mount on your thing. And at that point, you lose the whole anti-theft function where somebody can easily come, make a quarter mount, and just run away with this. Would it still blast the alarm because it detected movement? Yeah, it would, but this is already gone at that point. So anti-theft feature, I'm split on whether it's really useful or not, on top of everything else failing to work properly, and then the dependency on having to use the dedicated mount, that's a little questionable. I think it would have been really nice if they made it so that the anti-theft feature works even with the quarter mount. But at that point, they have to adapt to the more legacy mounting system. I don't know if that's actually even possible. So I won't look at them too negatively on that. So in conclusion, before I go to the conclusion, I know I haven't mentioned the battery life. Here's the deal. So many of the features were failing right out of the gate. I didn't even bother to take this on a more substantial, longer ride that I would normally be on a weekly basis. So I really didn't have a chance to test the battery life, to be truthful to you. During the standby mode, after it was charged at 100% and you're not really taking it out to ride, it seems to be holding charge pretty well. And during the 1 hour ride that I took this out on, which I was actually more than a ride because I stopped and did filming every now and then, it didn't lose one tick on the battery life. So be that as it may, I don't know if that really tells you anything, but battery life at this point is really important to me. No, because it fails on so many other fundamental features. So moving back on to a conclusion. I am a bit hesitant to talk negatively about a product where there had been a lot of people working on, engineering team, manufacturing people, the designers. I'm sure there had been a lot of people that put effort in to make this thing come to realization from a conceptual stage. And they put in a lot of hard work, so I really hate to speak negatively. However, I believe the unit fails in its fundamental promise. Before it starts to talk about all these smart features and everything else, it needs to do the basic features correctly. If it wants to detect a movement and that's how it starts a ride record, it needs to be able to do that well. And it should not stop in the middle of a ride thinking the movement has stopped, ending your ride record and adding insult to injury when it wasn't even stopped, still in movement. So all of it really makes me to think this is more of a proof of concept than a fully baked, matured product. It has a lot of promising features, but it just fails on execution. Now, I personally really hate mounting my phone to my cockpit during a ride for a variety of different reasons, but basically there isn't anything that you can't see on your phone, doing away with this. Of course, you're not gonna get the built-in integrated light or anti-theft features, but at this point, being able to see what you're doing in terms of speed and distance and stuff like that would be more meaningful to you than the light or the anti-theft feature, because in order for you to start talking about how well air conditioning works in a car, this car needs to first be able to move forward, right? Engine needs to be able to turn before you start even talk about all these other nice features in your car. And that's sort of the same analogy that I would give this. So this being version 2, I'm hoping and assuming the version 3 of this hopefully will mature and be a usable unit. Out in the world, we have so many different choices right now. You could get the smaller Garmins like the 130s, which is a tiny little unit and it does its core functions very well. And if you want to be more advanced, you could get your bigger Garmin Edge units and hammerheads and Wahoo elements and bolts. There's so many different options and competitions out there right now where this doesn't do one thing particularly well. So I would say you go with many of the other options. It promises so many things, but it fails to do one thing particularly well. Even if you're not a hardcore roadie or even a mountain biker, even if you're just a casual rider, I just don't think this thing does everything it's supposed to be doing to really give you ability to use it and trust it day in, day out on your rides. So what is my final verdict? As if you couldn't have figured it out by now, I would say save your money and do not pre-order and don't waste your time on, unfortunately, the SmartHalo2. All right, so that wraps up this review. I thank you for sticking around this long. Again, if you would do me solid and hit that subscribe button and hit the like button, hit the bell notification, and if you have any different feedback, if you want to ask me different questions, please do leave a comment and I would really be happy to engage with you. All right, thanks again. This has been Diabetic Cycling. Until next time, you guys all take care. Be good humans. I'm out.